And the fact that these gentlemen are here with me today, and we've had many conversations regarding school safety over the last several weeks and months, and even prior to that. I don't want anybody to think that this was just a knee-jerk reaction to Parkland, because this isn't. This is something that we're constantly trying to tweak and make better so that our students, our most critical assets, our students and our teachers, are safe when they go to school every day.
And of course, our public schools are what we're talking about now, but any of this information would apply to, there's a university which has, our school districts might have as many as 5 buildings in them, 3 or 4. There's 3, 4, 5 times as many over at IUP, and each of them are just as vulnerable as any other.
Yeah, absolutely. And IUP, they do a very good job of very regularly holding different security type trainings, whether it's active shooters, it's putting their emergency alert system into play. They have a lot of different things, and they've really been leaders for us, working with law enforcement to try to, for lack of a better term, prepare for the unpreparable.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this is a problem that needs to be tackled from a number of different angles. We have 3 school administrators in the room with us right now. I'll ask you each to introduce yourselves so that people can recognize your voices as you're speaking. Matt, we'll begin with you.
Hey, Matt Joyo, Marion Center Junior Senior High School Principal.
Michael Worthington, United Junior Senior High School Principal.
And Jody Rainey, Homer Center Junior Senior High Principal.
Now, you fellas have all been involved in these conversations, of course, and I'm interested seeing the 3 of you here and knowing that Indiana County has other schools, of course, and other school districts. How often are all of you able to get together, or groups of you able to get together, to discuss this issue and to bandy about ideas on the idea of school safety, school security for your students and everybody else within the building?
Well, we have a lot of opportunities, as Pat had said earlier. One of the things that when all the recent events that have occurred across the country, as Pat alluded to, that prompted the meeting at the IU, that was by the prompting of Mr. Joyo from Marion Center. In addition to that, so obviously through the IU, we have regular safety committee meetings. We have at least 3 of those a year where all the schools across the IU come together. We talk about, not only active shooters, but we talk about all kinds of safety issues. In addition to that, with the Indiana County Principals Association, that's Secondary Principals Association, Mr. Joyo is the president of that organization for us. We get opportunities to get together when our schedules can gel, but we do get together often and talk about, not only academic issues, but safety issues or what other. It's more of a roundtable where anything that we're maybe dealing with in our individual schools, we can network with other principals, see how they've handled it, if they've dealt with that. So we get together quite often to talk about, safety and just other issues that concern our students and our schools.
At Homer Center, is your situation different than, say, at Marion Center or at United? Does the building configuration figure into all of these considerations? What are some of the things you have to consider?
I think every school is different, and that's one of the things we talk about at Homer Center. I mean, we can look at other school districts, see what they're doing, what has worked, what maybe they would like to tweak or see different. But I think that knowing your facility, knowing your community, we can look towards other schools for suggestions and ideas. But I think all of us would agree that we have to make it something that works for us, and maybe what our needs are different than a Marion Center and United's. So like I said, we do get together, we talk, we take ideas. It's like any training. Everything they say to training, you don't necessarily can. It applies to your school, but if you have 3 or 4 takeaways that you can do to make your systems and your operations better, then it's definitely time well spent.
Let's look at it from Marion Center's angle and find out about, Matt, what you think of what we've just been talking about, building configurations, demographics of the people within them. Both you and Jody have elementary schools right next to your high school building. United does just across the road. Talk a little bit about what Marion Center's perspective is.
Like Jody alluded to, every school district is demographically physically different.
I know that at Marion Center we've taken a lot of steps as far as kiosks at the front doors, to every classroom locking, shatterproof glass in classroom door windows. So, and added security. We have armed security at the school also. So, all those levels of security, we're trying to get to be a harder target, or at least secure during the day. In the evening, that's a whole different type of animal, basketball games and those types of things. But I think the challenge for school districts are, we want to be welcoming. I mean, educational environment, we have parents in the building all the time. We have volunteers in the building. We have, field trips. We host other competitions from other schools in the buildings. And that's what the educational environment's meant to be, is supposed to be. And that's one of the reasons and one of the concerns that I had when I called this meeting, because we're at a forefront now. We're switching gears from not only being educationally focused, but now safety focused first. We've always been safety focused, but now we're dealing with a different level of safety. And then you tie into that the mental health part of it, and the school violence that have been happening. So right now it's important that all the players get together and figure out what we're going to do to positively be proactive and try to handle this, because I believe that the solution is within our families in our community, parents, kids talking to their kids talking to other kids. All the research that I've seen in the webinars and trainings that I've seen is school shootings can be prevented, but it comes from communication and connection with the school community and the students. Because what I've learned is school shootings don't just happen. They are planned, they are communicated prior to happening. So having a connection with the students, having a transparent dialogue, if you will, and that's why we're here today, to reach out to the families and to the communities to say, hey, talk to your kids, what's appropriate, what isn't, and how it can be perceived, especially in the social media realm where you sit behind a computer and you can type something, but it's in the eyes of the beholder a lot of times of how you're reading that email or that text or that Facebook post and how it's interpreted. So that's a lot of communication issues.
Let's find out about United's situation. I would assume that much of what these gentlemen have talked about applies to United as well, but you have your own issues, of course.
Yeah, I would agree with both of these gentlemen. Logistically, when you're looking at your building, your district, it's which law enforcement agency serves you, the distance you are from them. You have to work hand in hand, I think, with your local law enforcement agency, what recommendations they make. Ours is PSP, so that's Pennsylvania State Police. I work with Trooper Greenfield a lot, who is the school liaison with the state police. We had the risk and vulnerability assessments done. We've done a lot of renovations to our building to increase the security, change the entrances. We do have the secure entrances now. We have School Gate Guardian, which is a system that, as we scan driver's licenses, any visitor who comes in the building, it'll let us know if they have any felonies, if they are a convicted sex offender, anything of that nature that we would need to know. We also have armed security at United. We have retired state troopers who serve in that capacity. Like you said, logistically, we do have two buildings. Although they're not back-to-back, 56 separates us. That poses a challenge at times because you do have two different campuses. But we've taken security measures there that there's going to be notifications. We've updated all of our policies, our protocols. All of our staff has been ALICE trained. Also run, hide, and fight through the state police, which is their version of ALICE, what to do in a lockdown drill, to be more proactive than just lock the door and sit down. So it gives our teachers different criteria, different things that they need to follow. And I know Matt Joey is a certified trainer in ALICE training, so he can probably talk more about those trainings. But to me, I think that these things, that communicating with my colleagues, communicating with the state police and law enforcement, have helped us plan and better attempt to deal with something if it should ever happen in our area.
Michael Worthington, Matt Joio, and Jody Rainey, three high school principals within Indiana County, joining us in the studio. Indiana County District Attorney Pat Doherty as well. Pat, I'm going to give you something that I pulled off of a site today. This is, it's said with a little bit of humor, but there's a very serious angle to it. There is a suit store called Walker's in Upper New York State, about 40 miles north of Syracuse, and every year they hold a promotion where they send a random kid to school in a tuxedo. This year's promotion was last Wednesday. The high school kid they picked for it teased it on Facebook the night before by writing that it would be a very, quote, dapper day at school tomorrow. A woman saw the post, didn't know what the word dapper meant, and reported it as a possible shooting threat. We understand that in today's environment, people are really, really on edge, and that's an example of it right there. And
Sure.
And erring on the side of caution is probably an okay thing. Little education would help there as well, though.
Yeah, obviously the mantra that we're hearing nationwide right now is see something, say something. Okay? And that shows you how far the pendulum has swung, unfortunately. But I will take it as a good sign that somebody saw it and was paying attention. Was paying attention to what's going on social media. I mean, social media has really been a game changer in a lot of ways because it has instant information out there very quickly. The advent, Facebook, Snapchat is one app that the students tend to use a lot because the information disappears quickly unless it's saved by the recipient. So this has really changed how we see threats, how we obtain threats. I remember, and we talked about this in our meeting here a few weeks ago. When we all were students, we didn't have cell phones in our hands. Mm-hmm. We didn't have Facebook. Computers were it was really cool if you had one in your classroom. Now everybody, has something at their fingertips. If I wanted to threaten Jody, I had to go up to his face and threaten him. Or I'd pass a note to a friend who'd pass it to a friend who'd pass it to Jody. That doesn't happen now. I mean, now we can get behind our computer keyboards and we can be anonymous and we can be vile and we can say things we would never say to somebody's face. So, it's good that people are paying attention, but at the same time, we don't want to throw common sense out the window either. Yeah. And Matt touched on this real briefly, and I want to jump into it a little bit too. Mm-hmm. When we talk about how do we respond to these threats, I look at it as really a three-prong approach, what we're talking about. Obviously, law enforcement needs to be notified so they can do their job. If it's Indiana Borough Police or the state police, they need to get involved right away. We also need to engage mental health services. In Indiana County, we have the Mobile Crisis Unit. That operates out of the open door. They are a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service that can be dispatched, come out, assess, and make those emergency assessments. If somebody threatens violence to a school or to a coworker or to a colleague, something's not right there. Mm-hmm. So let's get the professionals to go and meet with that individual and let them make the decision. Is this person a danger to themselves or to others? Is this somebody that needs further treatment? Is this somebody that needs possibly to be hospitalized? While the state police are doing their investigation for possible criminal conduct. And then the third prong that we talk about, and that's why these gentlemen are with us today, is what is the school's response? The school has their own judicial disciplinary process that operates independent of what I do in the criminal justice system. And, a lot of times it's, one has virtually nothing to do with the other because they have different rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. And what they can do, and I have different rules and regulations, is what we can do. And, when we talk about juveniles, the process is different than talking about adults. So if they have an 18-year-old senior in their building that makes a threat, we're talking about adult court. If they have a 17-year-old student makes a threat, we're talking about juvenile court. And the goals and procedures are different in each of those. Yeah. So, we really have done a better job of engaging mental health and bringing them in to educate us and share with us what exactly their role can be to help not only us but the schools. Every school district has a school psychologist on staff, all right? And that's a great thing. However, the people from the mobile crisis, they are trained with acute assessments. You know, somebody that is in crisis, that's who they need to be looking at. And so if we wait a day and say, well, the psychologist will talk to them tomorrow, could be too late. So we want to do a better job of getting these therapy workers or these mobile crisis workers into the buildings, talking to the kids. State police and local police are now on board with, you know, a threat like this comes in, we're calling mobile crisis right away.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about the nature of threats before we're done here this morning, and what is the difference between something described as a verifiable violent threat as opposed to something a kid scrawls on a mirror in a bathroom,
right.
Which has to be taken as seriously as any other type of threat. But there was a term used a couple of moments ago, ALICE training. I believe, Matt, you're identified as the coordinator or the director of ALICE training.
Certified trainer in ALICE,
yes. Okay, so tell us what that is.
Okay, ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. Those acts are the premise of ALICE, meaning if there were a dangerous person in the building, someone that had a gun, we would institute our lockdowns, where the lockdown has changed. The previous lockdowns years ago, kids were hiding in the corner waiting. Okay, that no longer happens in the area school districts that are ALICE trained. Now the students are barricading the doors and taking an active role in not being a victim. Okay, so if someone comes in, they would engage the person to have the best opportunity at survival, because waiting is not the answer. Now, one of the things, I lost my train of thought a little bit. One of the things that I found with ALICE and as it pertains to schools is the communication is the key role in a school safety plan, because if we have various exits, various entrances. So if a shooter comes in at the south entrance, we have, at the school districts that I've trained, Homer Center, the ICTC, have a process in place now where any teacher can call a lockdown if they notice someone that has a weapon or something on them, so it can alert the rest of the school, putting into action the intercom system to where we start with our cameras and tell people exactly where the danger is so that they can evacuate. The idea is that we can save the most people by communicating where the danger is. That's one of the biggest challenges for a school setting. Yeah. You know, when these shootings happen, to get communication to where the danger is so students aren't walking into it or aren't staying in a place waiting. They're leaving. Yeah.
In the case in Parkland, of course, that was someone very familiar with the school and with school procedures who took advantage of them. So I would guess from any of the three of you that those procedures have to be constantly reviewed and modified from a tactical standpoint, and you certainly don't want to give out what those modifications might be or what those strategies might be. But as well as from, just not only from the practical standpoint of, okay, this is going to work better now than what we were doing before, but also in terms of secrecy and making sure that what you do is not going to be predictable. I guess that's the way what I'm trying to say here.
Right. And the idea of, before, 10 years ago, there were codes and there were tones and those things, the mass, only the staff knew what the tones meant or code blue meant, those types of things. Now it's a little more transparent to where we're calling it out and we're taking an active role. The idea is that we're not going to sit back and be victims and wait. We're going to take an active role. And I got great feedback from my student body when I did the lockdown barricade with the kids in the rooms, because they like to know and the communication part of knowing where the danger is so that they could get out a window or evacuate if they needed to.
Yeah, Michael, at United, is it much the same? Are there specific procedures where students know this is what I am to do in this place, and how often are they trained in those and drilled in those?
Yes, we have the same procedures. Obviously, we were trained the same way as Mr. Joio's building, and we do those trainings fairly regularly. Like, we just had our last lockdown drill, and we practiced the barricade, everything. The students went through that process, what it would look like, And it's good to practice that because teachers then need to look at their room. How do I rearrange this room to make this easier? Maybe I put a filing cabinet closer to the door. Maybe I put something here so I can do this within 5 to 10 seconds instead of trying to push something from the hallway across the room in front of that door. So the practice is imperative for this thing to work smoothly. They need to practice it. We practice drills where we've done other scenarios. I try to think of things, and I won't give you specifics here, obviously, but I try to think of things when we practice these drills. If I can't get in that room, if I wanted to harm someone, how do I get them out? Okay. So we practice drills of that nature to see how people react, and then we debrief as a staff and we talk about it, what was right, what was wrong, what could we have done better, and the kids are involved in those drills. Yeah. And you know, obviously, with some of the recent things in the media and stuff too, I met with all my student body like these gentlemen did too, and we talked to them about some of the things that are in the media and some of the things that they want them to do and what would be safe and how you would voice your opinions in appropriate ways and how we can help you and any concerns that they have. And they went through that with their teachers and they made lists and stuff of things that they felt very safe about, things that they like to see different. So we have that open dialogue too with the student body and things of that nature.
Jody Rainey at Homer Center, when you do drills of that nature, and we know the teachers are very, very concerned and are alert to those, the importance of it. What is the student reaction in the wake of what has been happening within the last 5 or 10 years in our area schools, not our area schools, but around the nation? I would assume the students have to take it very seriously.
Well, they do, and I think that we went through ALICE training this year with Matt. Matt come down and trained all of our staff, all of our aides, teachers, everybody. We did that as our preschool in service this year, and the feedback from our teachers was it was probably the most worthwhile, best training they've ever had in their careers. I think the thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to give teachers and also students when we do the drills, like as Matt said, the old days when you turned out the lights and you went back in the corner and hid, like somebody wants to do harm to things that we don't have school. I mean, they know we're there. Yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do? And I think that, training our kids on that, I think, has really helped because I think a couple of things that are important. Number one is, as Matt alluded to, is the communication. And, so we have systems now where we have our phone systems tied in that anybody can call that alerts every room because we're trying to buy time. We're trying to buy some time to get law enforcement there to take out the active shooter or take out the threat. The other thing is barricading the doors. Like certain things for us, our safety features, our doors lock from the inside and the outside. We teach behind locked doors. Matt taught us some things of how to gain leverage on a door that swings out, which all of our doors in our classrooms do. So different things like that. And I think the kids feel empowered. Teachers feel empowered. The kids feel empowered. They don't have to wait for us to tell them what to do. They know what to do now. Obviously, if you can evacuate, that's the first thing you want to do. So in our drills, like we have a situation down on one, like say the south side of a building, well, the north side should be getting out. Yeah. They don't be waiting around. But the people in that area that can't safely get out, they'll barricade their room. But they're also preparing to counter anybody that gets in. And Mike alluded to this a little bit too, I think, is the idea that if you can barricade your room and you do that properly, somebody who wants to do harm isn't going to fool around for 2-3 minutes trying to get into a door. So if you can barricade that door and get it secured to the point where if someone wants to do harm cannot get in, they're going to go to the next room. And if everybody does it the way they've been trained to do it, that's going to help save lives.
We're talking school security, school safety here on this program this morning. It is 27 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we're joined in the studio by Indiana County District Attorney Pat Doherty and by 3 of our area school principals. And Pat, I wanted to ask you this because, you talked about transparency, answering questions from parents. We're getting some on our Facebook page this morning. Right. Questions as to are the buildings all equipped with locking windows, locking doors? Is there armed school security in every school district? How are students or how are shooters getting into these schools? These are the things that are on parents' minds, and one of the things about it is every school district approaches it in a different way, don't they?
Yeah, every school district has their own policies and procedures and what works best for them. As far as, the one question about, armed security in the buildings. We've seen a rise in Indiana County in our school districts having armed guards in certain buildings. I'll let each of the principals that are here talk about their own districts, but this is something that has come up not only here locally but nationally, about having those resource type officers in the building. And I know that the districts that have taken the financial step to put those guards in the buildings, it's been very well received, from what I'm understanding. And a lot of them are former state troopers or former municipal police officers who have a good working relationship with the law enforcement in our communities, so they're able to free flow and have that exchange of information. As with any profession, there's always more comfort if you know that person or know that, hey, they were in law enforcement. Okay, I may tell him more than I may tell a guidance counselor. Sure. Nothing against guidance counselors, but guidance counselors will tell police less than they'll tell a fellow guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. It's just the way we are as humans. But I think having that layer of protection, because let's be realistic here. In Indiana County, let's say, and they're not here today, even though they've been active in our conversations. I'm going to pick on Purchase Line for a minute, because Purchase Line, where their school building is located, from Indiana to Purchase Line, there's no good way to get there.
No.
I mean, we're talking 15 to 20 minutes if the police are in Indiana. If they're up in that area, wonderful. We can be there faster. But, the reality of it is, the further your school is from a law enforcement location, it's just human nature that it's going to take longer. So if we have people in those buildings ready to go, ready to take action, that can avert a crisis, because we know these things happen quickly. We're talking 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And if it takes 15 or 20 minutes to get police mobilized and get there, they're getting there and it's already over.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest concern. And that's why I think a lot of the local school districts have taken that proactive step to say we need to have this extra layer of protection. And look, it's not without controversy. I know we've seen and heard stories about arming teachers, and we've heard and seen about, we don't want guns in the educational buildings. I agree with that in the perfect world. However, this is not the perfect world that we live in. Mm-hmm. And so we need to do everything we can and balance. Everything's a balance. We could make these buildings armed fortresses. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And we may have to shift resources from educational activities to do that. That's not what we want. Mm-hmm. We need to find that balance, and I think that's one of the things that school boards are really struggling with, is finding that balance between safe and secure and overkill. How much is too much? Mm-hmm. Because we don't want our kids to feel like they're going into a fortress every day.
Yeah. Matt Joyo, I know that at Marion Center you do have armed guards, as you've said, ex-state troopers, as a matter of fact, on staff there. The school day itself, the extracurricular activities, basketball games, the school parking lots, school buses. When you go security, you got to go full force, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And those guys do a great job. And I've had a lot of discussions with them, and their impact on the school. At the beginning, I was a little apprehensive, like, what's it going to be like having an armed security walking through my halls that I've never had before? But these guys are great because they're trained to look for body language, any types of unsecured doors, areas, parking lot behavior, and they make their presence known at very strategic times, just to make sure that, when we're coming into the building, those security guards are always out there greeting the buses, greeting the elementary buses, in the student parking lot. So they're a great resource to have for us.
Absolutely. Michael Worthington from United, and we'll remind listeners that in the studio with us this morning, Michael Worthington, principal at United Junior Senior High, Matt Joyo, principal at Marion Center Junior Senior High, Jody Rainey, the principal at the Homer Center Junior, Senior High School, Indiana County District Attorney Pat Doherty. Those were the ones who were able to get away from their school schedule in order to be with us today. I know, Pat, that more were invited but just weren't able to put it into their schedule today.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, Todd, that you're absolutely right on that. This was a collaborative effort of all the school districts in Indiana County. And these are just the three guys that I guess don't have enough work at their own buildings. And I guess I'm the same because I was able to get free and come over here.
Pat, don't help me.
And I say that obviously tongue-in-cheek to our school board that are listening out there. But, everybody was invited and everybody's been part of this process. And there is a free flow of information amongst the different districts. We were just fortunate enough that these guys were able to free themselves from their very busy schedules.
Yeah, Michael, let's talk about United's situation regarding guards, security personnel who are on the grounds.
We also have armed security throughout the instructional day who are retired state troopers. This is the first year we've had them, and we did it through the Safe Schools grant, and we were able to write that grant, and we received that grant. And so, like Matt said, I wasn't sure how that would work out. We never had them before, but they've been in our school community. It's almost like they belong there now. The kids accept them. The kids. One of the things that when we talked about, when they were talking about all the different things in after Parkland, and we met with the kids, the one thing they said that made them feel the most secure was having those gentlemen in our building. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's not just a gun walking around the school. They are part of our community. They talk to the kids about different careers. They meet with the kids. Kids feel comfortable talking to them. They feel safer having them there. The parents, it's been well received with the parents. Like Matt said, they're present when we have dismissal, arrival, anytime we have any kind of events, anything like that. These guys, they go out of their way to make the school safer. The one thing that I would say that I appreciate the most from them is that perspective. Like Matt said, that law enforcement. I'm an educator. I'm not in the law enforcement business. They have a different perspective on things than I would have. They look at things a little bit different. So to me, they're part of my team, and we sit down and we talk about things. How can we make this better from your side of this? And through communicating that with them, and like I said, the state police have been great for us. Trooper Greenfield, I talk to him all the time about these types of things. We share a lot of information. They have 24-hour access to our building. They have every way that they need to get in it. We have different programs that they work with our security officers. We have a system called Navigate Prepared. I believe it's a company out of Ohio who came in and actually videoed the entire interior of our buildings, every room, which way the doors swing, what's inside them. And the state police have access to this. So if there was ever an incident there, before their CERT team or whoever comes on scene, they can look at that. If you say, hey, this room, whatever, 200, they know what's in that room, which way the door swings before they ever step foot in it, which could be paramount for them before they step in there as far as where this person might be located and all these types of things. So having that presence, I think, has definitely been beneficial to us at United. I would recommend that anybody look into it because, like I said, it's not just a gun in the school. Mm-hmm. It's another presence that makes the kids feel safer, the community feel safer, and it helps me out as an administrator. So.
All right, let's get Jody Rainey's perspective from the Homer Center School District. And Jody, the idea of security guards on grounds, armed security guards or not, from the Homer Center perspective.
Homer Center does not have armed guards during the instructional day. We have the capacity to bring them in. What we did, we were very fortunate when Dan Sacco, who was the longtime safety and security director at IRMC, retired. I have a long relationship with Dan through the fire service and just as a friend. So we were able to bring Dan as a consultant, and what we did was we put our focus on a lot of our after-school activities. So we actually have employed a force, basically a security team, that's made up a lot of people that did a lot of safety and security and still do at Indiana Regional Medical Center. Some of those guys are municipal police officers, as Pat alluded to. And we've had situations that have happened in Homer City with a person escaping from the magistrate out of the custody of law enforcement, that we've went into an external lockdown and have brought in our armed guards as an extra layer of protection. Of course, the board's in discussion about what to do, but I think it's important, like our perspective at Homer Center is that, and Dan's perspective that he's kind of taught me is that you got to look at security and safety in layers. Okay, so you have a couple different things, I think, from our viewpoint that Dr. Korn has directed Dan and I to prepare to present to our board as considerations, and those are in 3 phases. One would be an SRO or an armed guard in the building during the instructional hours. One would be increase in mental health services for our students. Just because of funding and things of that nature, Homer Center High School is down to 1 guidance counselor, and that counselor is also my test coordinator. So when you get into PSSA testing in April and Keystone testing in May, really the access to a guidance counselor in our school is limited. Mr. Rodkey and I have to put on multiple hats and do those types of things. So looking at that type of service for our students, the need for a second counselor potentially, and then also hardening your building. What type of things, we've done a lot to our buildings, but what else can we do? So, can you do everything? No, you cannot. As Pat alluded to, that'd be, we are limited by our budget and also our concern for safety. So I think for us, it's kind of looking at that approach. And we do have, though, like I said, the capacity to bring in. We do have armed guards. I think the thing that's also important from our perspective is it's important to know that, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but a retired trooper has the same authority as an armed guard as a municipal officer does. They can't arrest, they can't cite, they can investigate. And so we have that capacity with our security team that we have right now, but we do not have that during the instructional day.
District Attorney Pat Doherty, I want to bring this conversation around to this. And see, you were worried that we wouldn't be able to fill an hour. We could fill 6 or 7 of them. The nature of threats. You mentioned a while back that it's different now than when we were in school. When I was in school, every student carried a knife,
Right.
and they were going hunting after school. Their rifle was out in their car. It's nothing like that these days, and of necessity, because of the way that the world is now, and how the world is so connected. But these school administrators, and that somebody scrawling a message because they want to get out of school for the rest of the day on the restroom mirror is one thing. Somebody identified as some dangerous person who's just come onto the school grounds from outside the school is a whole different level. But every threat has to be investigated and treated seriously.
Yeah, you obviously, Todd, as you said, the old message scrawled in the bathroom or the note left in the library or whatever it is, we have to understand and look what is driving that message. Is it as simple as, I stayed up too late last night and I didn't study for my chemistry test? Mm-hmm. So if I say there's a bomb in the building, they're going to evacuate, and I'll take my test tomorrow. I mean, in the simplistic world, I'd love to say, yeah, that happens, but come on, we'd be kidding ourselves if we really thought that's the driving force.
Yeah.
We have to understand the other issue that we're dealing with is teenage brains. Teenage brains aren't as developed as an adult. One of the things that they lack is impulse control. One of the things they lack is decision-making abilities. That's why you can't, drink until you're 21. There's certain reasons why. Because the brain isn't fully developed and kids make impulsive decisions. I'm sure these guys see it every day in their buildings. So we have to understand that part of it. And like they said about mental health, our teachers aren't necessarily the best people that are trained in mental health, but I guarantee you the teachers know and the teachers see and the students see and know, and when somebody's not acting right, whether it's mentally or whether it's emotionally, we got to understand our teachers spend how many hours a day with our children. These teachers know when somebody's not right. And we need to get them to be more vocal and talking about, hey, do you need some help? What can we do? Maybe calling in mobile crisis at that point before, things even get to the threat issue. But, the game has changed because there's so many different opportunities to put these threats out there. Social media, I mean, I've gone into each one of their schools, and I always pull out my cell phone and say, isn't this a good thing? And it's also a terrible thing.
Sure. Because
you can get you in trouble faster, more. And the thing is now, kids have their phones in schools. I'm not sure if every district allows them, but whether they allow them or not, they're in their locker, they stop by, text, tweet, Facebook, whatever it is, they can do it right from their communication device. It could be an iPad that's given to them for instructional purposes. These create all kinds of different layers, as we've mentioned, but Jody hit it kind of right on the head. We have to look at this as a layered approach. Let's get our teachers, he's down a counselor. Let's get our teachers trained in mental health first aid. We've done that. That teaches them the ability to see and react and know what to do and don't be afraid. There was a big push, and I'm going to shift from threats to suicide for a minute, because suicide's a big mental health issue as well. And we had some suicides in our county, and I know Ralph May and the Suicide Task Force, and I've been here talking to you before about this, but there's a great push in, hey, let's get people trained so they see the signs and they see what they're looking for so that we can help these individuals before they make that ultimate step. Mental health is mental health, in my opinion. Sure. So whether we're evaluating somebody for suicidal threats or homicidal threats, are they a danger to themselves or others? And what are they saying, and how do we react? So, it's going to take a lot of different things. We can't just say we're going to harden a building, or we're going to put armed guards, or we're going to put a police officer in every building. That's not going to get it all done, because we still have to have people that can analyze the threats and analyze the mental health behaviors of the individuals that are making these threats.
Let's find out from our principals about that. Training of teachers, their receptiveness to such training, how often it occurs, how deep it gets, Matt?
Right. Well, we just had an in-service, and we spent the majority of the day talking about suicide, talking about mental health. One of the things I really want to touch on, and I apologize for switching the topic a little bit, because I called the Indiana Safety Committee together to form a process for the educational environment of threats, because it was a rash of threats hitting the area from Westmoreland County, Allegheny County, all over. And I wanted to express where the school districts and how that's affecting us. And I'll give you an example. Prior to this heightened level of awareness, we just had to determine guilt or innocence of a threat. Okay. If it was a terroristic threat determined by board policy, okay, once I determined that, I could take the appropriate steps. Now, the difference is we have to assess the threat level, okay, which brings in what Pat talked about at the mobile crisis and the mental health aspect of it. Because when I end up with a discipline referral that a student threatened harm to the school district or another student, I can't say, he's 13, he's joking. Mm-hmm. Okay, those days are gone, that it's just an inappropriate call. I have to assess and take it very seriously to start and assess the threat level. Does he have the means? Is there depression? Is there mental health issues? Are those, and those are all the things like, we talked about before. We're educators. All right, I can investigate and determine if it happened, when it happened, and the witnesses that heard it happen, but I can't assess the threat level of what's on the student's social media, what's happening at home mentally, those types of things, because, we are educators, and discipline is a service we offer. It's meant to curb behavior. It's meant to change behavior. And these are adolescents. So like Pat talked about, impulsivity, decision-making skills. We have to educate the kids on that. And that's one of the biggest, if anybody gets anything out of this, it's about communicating with the kids and getting the students to kind of filter what they say and know what they're saying and how it can be perceived, because we don't have the luxury anymore of saying, you were just having a bad day, all right, yeah, or you're joking around, that kind of thing. So that's where, when you talk about school districts with the zero tolerance policies, it has to be an evolving thing, because zero tolerance is not going to fix everything, because students say impulsive things. Were they serious? Were they not serious? Does the kid need expelled for 1 year for a comment? Those types of things. And that's kind of where we are at the educational frontier of this threat assessment. And we've developed a process in which when we determine there is a terroristic threat made, the team that we're going to activate is the mobile crisis, the law enforcement, our guidance counselors, and SAP teams, so that we can immediately get the resources together to assess the threat level. We're certainly going to take disciplinary precautions and provide a safe environment. But then we have to talk about, okay, how serious is this, and to what level do we need to finish?
Yeah. I want to, Michael or Jody, either of you could answer this, because I'd like to, we have about 11 minutes left in our hour. The idea that today's environment, in terms of the threats, security, safety of the students, all of those very serious topics, can actually take the joy out of being an educator away, and can actually sap it away from the students as well, so that going to school becomes a very stressful thing for them. And that does turn into a serious topic, because this is supposed to be a great time in their lives, and yet they're forced by today's society to face up to some very demanding situations.
I would agree with that 100%. I think, first and foremost, for the kids to be educated, they have to feel safe. And I think, listening to the conversation today, you can see that many districts are taking the necessary steps to make their student body feel safe. That line of communication between the community and the students also has to be there, so they're aware of what steps you're taking to make that a safer environment. It is, I don't want to say it takes away, like you said, it does take away a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time. But I think it's time that is well spent, because, like I said, first and foremost, for me to be concentrated on my education as a student, I have to feel safe in that building. And I've told my students, the expectation is when you come here for your parents, that you go home the same way you come here. And nobody wants you to be safer than I do, or the staff here at United. And I think our kids understand that, and they feel that. They see the things that we've done in our building, in our district, to make it a safer environment. They know. And I think they have that confidence with our staff, and that trust that if they see something, like Pat said, they can say something, and they know that threat will be dealt with, or that concern will be dealt with in an appropriate manner, because that trust is there with the staff and the students, I believe.
Yeah. Jody, if you could spend a couple of moments talking on that same topic.
I think I agree with what Matt and Mike both said, and I think that it comes down to, when Mike alluded to earlier about his kids feel safe, and a lot of that had to do with their security measures that they've taken, our kids also, in our school climate survey, indicated they feel safe in our school. One of the things they alluded to was that they felt that there was somebody in the building, an adult, that they felt they could talk to about academic, personal, social, emotional issues that they're having. So I think that, empowering our students, and Pat alluded to it at the very beginning in his opening comments about, the idea that if you see something that doesn't look right, feel right, just, don't think it's right, then you have an obligation to say something. I mean, truth be known, how we come across a lot of things in our schools, our students have that trust and confidence in us to say something to an adult. Sometimes it's an administrator, sometimes it's a counselor, but, that is how a lot of these things get discovered. In one of the webinars that we trained on, Matt alluded to, kind of evolving off of the zero tolerance policies. A lot of people like those. But one of the things that they said is, and they were talking specifically about shooters, but they generally communicate their intent before they do it, either through social media, through maybe a writing in a class assignment, by telling a friend, a parent might have a concern. But a lot of times in schools where there's zero tolerance policies, a lot of times people don't report those to the proper officials, because they get concerned because they don't want to see a student destroyed. That's not our business. Our business is to educate and help kids grow, not to destroy kids. And so I think that, that the point that Matt made about the evolving, maybe moving from zero tolerance and getting the mobile crisis in, getting those threat assessments done, to determine what level of care needs done. As Pat alluded to earlier, Maybe that's inpatient. Maybe that's outpatient. Maybe that's just some counseling, whatever it might be. But I think that, to me, those are the concerns for me, like the level of threats. Like, we're going to find out about threats because our students have the people and the personnel that they can talk to about that. And if you think about, we're all junior, senior high here in this room. You know, the transition from elementary to high school, we're dealing with kids that are 12 years of age the whole way to 19 and 20 years old sometimes. And I think that transition, you know, we were kind of joking about it earlier. You know, I have 7th graders that have had 12 boyfriends or girlfriends this year already. You know, but the thing is, it's the level of those kids grow physically, emotionally, socially, okay, in different ways and at different rates. And I think sometimes, like, that's a hard thing sometimes for a 13 or 14-year-old kid to deal with, a breakup in a relationship, a change in friendships, because those kids are gaining different interests and growing in different ways. So I think those are the things that we need to focus on is, you know, encouraging parents, as Matt said earlier, to have those conversations with their kids, to understand that we can no longer say you're having a bad day. You know, this kid is, you know, experiencing something. Oh, he was just joking. Those days are over. Mm-hmm. You know, our role as educators, we're not trying, again, to destroy people. We're trying to get the help and the services to our students and our families that is much needed, so we can maybe turn the tide.
Just a few minutes left here this morning on this special edition of Indiana in the Morning, where we've been talking about the issues of school violence, school security, school safety. And Pat Doherty, I want to turn to you as we near the end of our time together today. You talked about the 3 prongs, the law enforcement community, the mental health community, the school community, and the need for them, and the obvious fact that it is that the working together must be something that is going to be a driving force to move this conversation forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's real easy to get stuck in your own silo, for lack of a better term, you know, where the schools are on one side, law enforcement's here, mental health's over here, and nobody ever wants to share information. We can't allow that to happen, and that doesn't happen here in Indiana County. We have been very blessed that we have very proactive school districts that are willing to work with us. You know, I can say emphatically about the districts in our community, I have never once been told, no, we're not interested in that initiative. Whatever initiative it is that I've come up with, whether it's cell phones, whether it's drugs, whether it's bullying, suicide awareness, you know, these districts have welcomed us in full force, given us the resources and the time we need to share our message with the students, with their teachers, and it's been a tremendous relationship, and we're very blessed. And they have that same relationship with law enforcement. You know, not just my office, but also with the state police and the municipal police departments that serve their districts. You know, so it is very important. But the other thing is, and these guys have said it multiple times, they're educators. They're not investigators. So when we have these issues, let's get the trained investigators that are there, that have done this for their livelihood. You know, we want to have the best outcome. You know, if you have to have heart surgery, you're not going to call a foot doctor in to do it. You're going to call the people that do it on a regular basis, the heart surgeon, to do it. Mm-hmm. That's what we're saying with investigators. These guys are trained. These women are trained. They know what to do, and that allows the administrators to be school administrators. You know, they don't need to worry about driving down to the individual's house to determine, well, is there a cache of weapons there that the student has access to? Let the law enforcement guys do that. And besides, I don't want to make it sound too simplistic, because it certainly isn't, and it's very stressful and a very dangerous situation. But, you know, if a high school teacher or guidance counselor or principal shows up at somebody's door, that's a little different than a state trooper in full uniform.
Sure.
You know, there's that different level of authority and a little different level of compliance, hopefully, when law enforcement shows up. The same with the mental health team. You know, let's get them in, let's talk to these kids, let's see what's going on, and work together to eradicate the issues. But yeah, it's a team effort all across the board. As I said earlier, every district in the county is engaged, Every county in the district is talking about these issues, and we want to make our schools as safe as possible for our children.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming in today. You've certainly, as I said, pushed the conversation forward, and maybe folks have a little bit better understanding of the issues that you are dealing with in everyday society and within our communities. It's been enlightening for me, and I hope for everybody else. And there you go, on your way back to school, and let's see if we can't make it a better world in which we live.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.
It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. It's WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Coming up, Fox News at the top of the hour. We follow that with, of course, our Brian Kilmeade show.